what do you think Antifa thinks of Joe Biden? There was probably a hope that after Biden won the election, perhaps the Antifa violence would calm down.
Yeah, so that didn't happen. We're now many weeks until 2021, months after Trump had won the election in November, and there's been more than a dozen riots that have happened in the Pacific Northwest. Some people were surprised. They thought, "Oh, these are Biden supporters." No, they're not actually. If you look at what they say, look at the banners. For example, one of the banners that they carried on their inauguration day riot in Portland was a large one that said, "We don't want Biden, we want revenge." And there's a large image of a Kalashnikov rifle, if that wasn't subtle enough. And so they don't recognize the American government, period. They're working to overthrow it. They don't recognize any president, the legitimacy of any president. So that means opposing, before the current administration, yes, opposing Trump, but opposing any administration that would replace Trump anyways, because they don't see the US government as legitimate. They view it as a fascist state that must be overthrown. So this is what I mean when I say that people on the mainstream left who have been feeding and growing this beast because they shared a mutual enemy in the Trump administration or against Republicans, whatever, well, now this beast is too big to slay. And we've seen the violence that they've carried out. They've attacked, they've assaulted the mayor of Portland. The mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, is somebody who gave them the space to grow under his watch. And they turned around and have attacked him. They showed up to the homes of people on city council in Portland, for example, who voted against defunding the police. So, and the thing is, they're not getting held accountable when they're carrying out these criminal activities. It's not just that they're doing it, it's that they're doing it and then doing it over and over and over because there's no consequence. So one of the projects that I'm known for is getting the public records of people who are arrested at riots. And we have now a sample size in just in Portland of around 1,000 cases. And the overwhelming majority, by that I mean more than 90%, have their charges immediately dropped by the prosecutor, who is a politician. It's an elected position, who campaigned on a so-called progressive platform. And as soon as he came into office last summer, he literally decriminalized felony rioting. That was one of the things that will be automatically discharged. So, this is the reality of what's happening in parts of America. It's not hyperbole when the DOJ last year described some parts of the US as anarchist jurisdictions, because you do have a breakdown of the rule of law and the system's not working. And these extremists are exploiting civil rights, human rights to carry out their wanton violence in the name of free speech and right to protest. And unfortunately, they've been given cover. You know, I keep going back to the media because they wouldn't have been able to do so much damage if there wasn't this Antifa talking point that was mainstream, which claims that people over property, that the looting and breaking and starting fires and destroying buildings and businesses, that's not violence because it's on an inanimate object. Like, this is like, Portland is really a first world slum if you go to its downtown. Like, they're trying to create an environment where people don't have trust in law enforcement on one level, and two, law enforcement just don't have the resources to even respond to crimes that are happening in the cities. We have a huge uptick in most American urban areas in violence. Police officers across many departments are resigning in droves or taking early retirement. So all of the conditions that allowed things to get so bad in 2020, they're all still there. And Trump was never a real variable. That was just a convenient excuse.
That's terrifying, man. there's so many points that I agree with there, specifically talking about how allowing them to embed in, create these organizational structures and also sort of the intellectual structures, understanding how they need to develop, and then writing up. You go through basically a curriculum in the book of how they indoctrinate and train new members into Antifa. But it's kind of the same way that a cancer grows. You know, if it's just one cell that turns, the other cells around it can attack. But after a little bit of time, if you get too many cells, they can metastasize and actually turn into a genuine cancer. And that's a much bigger operation to try and get rid of. And it seems to be the same. I mean, a first world slum in somewhere like Portland, and wasn't it the homicide rate increased by 200%, the most it's been in a number of decades, something like that?
Correct. That's right. That came during the height of the riots. So we've been having this unprecedented level rise in shootings and gun-related homicides in Portland. And this has been, like, Antifa have been celebrating this. They're really happy because they say they want to abolish the American criminal justice system, abolish police and all that. But what they essentially want to be is to replace the police with their own paramilitary type groups. And the cities under weak police leadership, under weak city council and weak state leadership have allowed them to do it. And so I'm not over-exaggerating when I say that in last year in particular, when the riots were happening every night, parts of downtown were literally no-go zones in that they had people patrolling, their own militias, people who are armed with weapons, patrolling around to make sure that this huge part of downtown, right outside of one of the courthouses that they were trying weeks on end to burn down, that the only people who were there were their allies and supporters and members. So they've attacked countless number of press. As many people know, they beat me severely in 2019 and gave me a brain hemorrhage. So, like, they don't even hide the extremism and the violence. It's not like they do it behind closed doors. They do it in the open, and it gets captured on video. And still, people actually think that we're dealing with noble anti-fascists who are just opposing racists.